right, you guys up in the high seats, you can make sure you got your fans. All right, we're going to get started here real quick as soon as we get our dignitaries seated and on stage. Thank you all for coming to our 75th annual meeting. I know it's not as big and beautiful as we would hoped it would be, but I'm glad you're here and we're able to gather. So you can stay standing. And we'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is right there on the back wall. As soon as I get it together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I'll turn it over to Walt Christensen.
Morning, everybody. Can everybody hear okay back there in the back and in the front? That any better? Okay, welcome everybody to our 75th annual non-meeting. And by that, I mean we don't have 100 members here presently. So we're going to have our annual non-meeting, and it's happened before. So according to Loophole, our outhouse attorney, he will come up here and make an announcement here in a little bit. But the board passed a bylaw here last month to have an election. We'll have a non-meeting, and it's going to be just like our annual meeting, and hopefully we don't bore anybody. But due to exigent circumstances, and I don't know where the hell he came up with that word, but anyway, we wanted to have an election so we could keep going. And according to the state statute, the co-op will survive just fine and go on with the daily routine of what happens with the co-op. They'll still charge you guys electricity for the kilowatts you use, so rest assured that you're not going to get away with no payment. But anyway, I'm going to ask Loophole to come up here and make that announcement, and then the board will make a motion and a second, and then the board will vote on that to accept the terms of the bylaws. So anyway, with that, Mark, can you come up?
Thank you, Walt. Thank you, Walt. Just for everybody's information, the board did adopt a bylaw amendment at its last meeting because of the circumstances of COVID that added some language to Article 3, Section 1. That language indicates, however, a board may elect, in the event of exigent circumstances, to conduct an election without a meeting pursuant to Wyoming Statute 1719-708. And we don't have, actually, a quorum in the sense that there's only 82 people here in person right now. So if there are exigent circumstances, you can go forward with your meeting, even though it won't be called it won't be an official meeting, but it will allow you to accept the results of the election, which is an interesting twist, but it's in the statutes. It's under Title 17, and I think that's what we need to do today. So is there a motion to that effect? Yes, sir, Mr. Rittaller. That we have exigent circumstances? Okay. All right. Okay, is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we're going to move forward. So, it's my duty generally to read the notice of the meeting, but I do have a couple of jokes that I want to tell before we get there. I've done this for 38 years now, I think, so it's not something new to me or most of you, and I hope I don't offend anybody. It is a political season, And so I picked a couple of jokes that I didn't think were too offensive to anybody. You can turn the names around in these jokes, so if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you can fit your name into the joke, and it'll come out exactly the same except on the other side. Yes, sir. So anyway, there were 3 young boys out one day at a lake, and it turns out that Nancy Pelosi was out there too. And she was courting people, and she had her entourage, and she jumps in the lake. And it turns out she can't swim. So the boys noticed that, and they swam over to her, and they jumped in, or they swam over to her, and they saved her. And when it was all done, she was very happy. And so she said to the 3 boys, "Thank you so much for saving me. I'm 3rd in line for the presidency. I'm Speaker of the House, and I'll give you anything you boys want." So the first little boy, he said, "I'd just like to have a skateboard with all the bells and whistles on it." She said, "Fine, that's easy for me to do. I'll do that." The second boy said, "Well, I would like a skateboard." Let's see, a bicycle, I should say, a bicycle with bells and whistles and lots of chrome. The third young man, he was a little more, he got some time to think about it, so he went up to her and he said, "I'd like to have a new electric wheelchair with built-in stereo system, 2 cup holders, and a lot of chrome." And Nancy Pelosi says, "Okay, if that's what you want and you really think you will use it even though you're not handicapped." "Well, how can you use it if you're not handicapped?" And the little boy says, well, he was kind of blushing, but he said, "No, I'm not handicapped. But when my dad finds out that I saved you, I will be." So, okay, the second one is, this is a religious joke. I tried to include every single religion I could think of. I know there's a million more. So, anyway, the Presbyterian Church called a meeting to decide what to do about their squirrel infestation. After much prayer and consideration, they concluded that the squirrels were predestined to be there and they shouldn't interfere with God's divine will. At the Baptist church, the squirrels had taken an interest in the baptistry. The deacons met and decided to put a water slide on the baptistry and let the squirrels drown themselves. The squirrels liked the slide and unfortunately knew instinctively how to swim, so twice as many squirrels showed up the next week. Lutheran Church decided that they were not in a position to harm any of God's creatures, so they humanely trapped their squirrels and set them free near the Baptist church. 2 weeks later, the squirrels were back when the Baptists took down the water slide. But the Catholic Church came up with a very creative strategy. They baptized all the squirrels and made them members of the church. Now they only see them at Christmas and Easter. But not much was heard from the Jewish synagogue. They took the first squirrel and circumcised him. They haven't seen a squirrel since. So anyway, official notice. Notice is hereby given that the 2020 annual membership meeting of Powder River Energy Corporation will be held at 11 a.m. Mountain Time on Saturday, August 22nd, 2020 at Sundance High School. Order of business is as follows. Report as to the number of members who are present, voted by mail and by proxy. We actually have 80-some people here in person and 362 votes by mail, so we're good there. Reading of the notice, which I'm doing now. Approval of unapproved minutes, presentation and consideration of all necessary reports, and election of directors, unfinished business, new business, and adjournment. So as I said, we really won't have a formal meeting, but we will have an election because we adopted that bylaw amendment that allows us to go ahead and have an election of directors even though we don't have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, this meeting is officially called to order. Has everybody voted that has a chance to vote? Well, therefore, I call the election closed, and I will excuse the voting judges to go back here by the front desk there, and then Missy will take you to your jail, and Jerry will go out and explain to you how he wants the election run. But anyway, thank you to the voting judges. So anyway, with that, you're excused to go start counting the votes. And I would appoint Betty Finn as the recording secretary. And with that, I'll introduce Mike Easley, our General Manager and CEO.
Thanks, Walt. Hello, everybody. I'm going to do some introductions here first, but first thing I'd like to do is introduce a special guest and invite Governor Mark Gordon to join us via video for our first introduction. So if technology, cross your fingers for technology to work, and looks like we have you here, Gordon, Governor Gordon.
Well, thanks, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm sorry I'm not there to hear more jokes in person. It's always fun to come to the annual meeting, and as a loyal Pre-Corp member, I have to tell you I'm still using the crock pot I won about 15 years ago. That's the only thing I've ever won from Pre-Corp, but I really, really appreciate it. I thought today that I would just kind of give you an update, but particularly wanted to just talk about my experience as a Pre-Corp member and just a little story which I think speaks to the leadership that folks like Earl and Walt have demonstrated over the years, and what an amazing electric cooperative we have. I remember back as probably about 2006 or so, we had a massive snowstorm in Ucross, right outside of Ucross. Poles were down for 5 days or so, and everybody came out to try to help get things going. I was plowing snow, and I looked off, and there were actually three Pre-Corp pickups that were all stuck in the snow, kind of getting close to one of the poles, and the guy came over and said, could you give us a pull? Now, it was that kind of time of day where you just had enough traction in your tractor. So I pulled off the road and went through all the deep snow, hooked up my nylon rope, and I gave a big old jerk, and pretty soon that pickup started to move. And we went about 3 feet, and then suddenly the second pickup started to move, and I was thinking, uh-oh, we have 3 pickups all hooked to each other, and I have just enough power to get us out. Well, I was successful that day, and I think that is a little bit of a story that speaks a bit about where Wyoming is right now. And I think it also talks about the amazing leadership that Pre-Corp has been able to generate over the years. Just being able to keep this utility going. You've been through boom, you've been through bust, we've been stuck, we've been able to pull ourselves out, and we keep going. I know that recently your general rate case was approved. And I think it was approved because we all have a knowledge of what's going on right now. Right now, nationally, we see a big reduction in travel and in the price of oil and gas. It's been devastating to Wyoming. When we as an electric cooperative had coal bed methane, we know exactly what happened, and we're still dealing with the challenges that coal bed methane and being able to wind down some of the infrastructure that we had to build there. But you've done it responsibly, and you've done it exceptionally well, met the needs of consumers like myself, and been able to meet the needs of industry as it's gone forward. I don't have to tell you that this COVID thing has been problematic for the economy, but I'm very proud of where Wyoming has been. We're one of 3 state fairs, in the nation that went ahead. We've had, starting with the Hewlett Rodeo right up there in Crook County, we've had a very good rodeo season. The rodeos that canceled this year, they're coming back next year, and the rodeos canceled not because of COVID so much as because sponsorships had pulled out, and the challenge was, how are you going to put a rodeo together? So they've pulled together, and they are doing amazing work getting ready for next year. Shine Frontier Days is going to feature Chris Ledoux as their honoree, and Garth Brooks is going to be there, and they're really getting started for that. I also want to say that we're one of two Superior Livestock venues. Just this last week, Superior Livestock held a very successful sale in Sheridan, Wyoming. That's only the second one. Winnemucca was the other, only the second one that was able to be held outside of Fort Worth. So Wyoming is growing and open. Our economy, we're really hoping, will come back with the mineral production. We're starting to see a little bit of rise in price of oil. We're starting to see, we have one rig now running reportedly in Jonah. So maybe gas comes back too. Wyoming is standing tall, trying to make sure that we preserve and extend the life of coal. And we're working very hard to intervene in cases that might have an impact on ratepayers in Wyoming as other states like Colorado try to close their coal plants quickly and put the depreciation costs on consumers in places like Wyoming. Recently, we signed a 2-year contract with the Energy Policy Network, which is an outside consultant who's participated in other states' public service commissions to fight early closures of utility plants that burn Powder River Basin coal. The PSC is completing rules on implementation of Senate File 59 and Senate File 21, which are good faith efforts to be able to sell Wyoming power plants as companies like Rocky Mountain Power want to start to close them down. Last year, we started rules on House Bill 200, which was the first of its kind in the nation to really talk about how we address climate change. If you watched any of the news this last week, it was full of things about how important climate change is, and yet we know that if we go with an all-renewable portfolio, we have done nothing to take carbon out of the atmosphere. We in Wyoming understand that carbon is an essential part of really important building blocks for things like auto parts and aircraft. So with the ITC over in Gillette, we've been able to get started on the research that's going to lead our state and our nation forward addressing these issues. But more importantly, we're fighting on every front with this administration to make sure that we are able to get finally good carbon capture and sequestration. Now, I know that people talk about that being an expensive alternative, but when you think about the absolute cost of trying to idle these plants and not having a dependable energy that they are able to produce that goes into the grid, and that when we had the bomb cyclone, about 80% of the electricity that was generated from coal, not from wind, not from solar, but from coal. So it is essential that we stand tall to protect our coal resources and to make sure that our minerals are able to be produced, and Powder River Energy is an absolute partner in how we do that. I thought, there might be some questions about the Oxy land deal that we just withdrew from. So I thought I'd just give a very high level view. About a year and a half ago, I approached Vicki Hollub, who's the CEO of Occidental Petroleum. She is a good friend of my former boss, Steve Ferris, at Apache Corporation, and asked her if they were interested in, since they had indicated they needed to sell a tremendous number of assets, if they were interested in looking at any of the southern tier land grant properties. And she said that they were under a lot of pressure from stakeholders, particularly Carl Icahn, who is an activist investor, and that they were anxious to try to do something. So we talked for about 3 or 4 months. I mentioned it to the leadership of the legislature, and I brought it to the attention of the legislature early last year, just so we would have it out in the open. Occidental finally gave us the information that we were hoping for. In the process, we contacted about 5 nationally recognized, internationally recognized investment banks on the advice of several advisors, including Steve Ferris, Greg Hill from Hess Corporation, Chad Deaton, and Fred Parody, who used to work for FMC Trona, just to sort of get a sense of where we ought to figure out what our values were. Occidental in April and again in May, and then finally in June, opened up for various bids. And we were one of the top bidders, but sadly we were about $200 million behind where the top bidder was. We bid about $1.2 billion. I think it's important that the people of Wyoming understand these are investment monies out of the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. So funds that cannot be used to meet current expenditures or any of the budget shortfalls. These are funds that have to be invested for the best interests of Wyoming and to keep your taxes low. When we did our analysis at the rate at where we bid the price, we figured we'd get anywhere from an 8% to a 12% return over about 10 years. That is a vast improvement over where the portfolio is now, and we were really hopeful. Hopeful for a number of reasons. One is that it would allow us to be able to block up checkerboard land, which would make it easier to manage for grazing in multiple uses, and also because it would allow us to have a better sense of how to order development a bit, because we know that as renewables come on board, they run the potential of sterilizing, in other words, making it impossible to mine the minerals that are underneath. And this is an issue that we'll have to face as we go forward, and we see the increasing pressure for renewable development, particularly in southwestern Wyoming. In the end, it was a good effort on our part. Wyoming would have stood to have done pretty well by the investment, but it doesn't hurt our performance going forward. And we will continue to work with Orion Mine Finances, which we believe will be potentially the ultimate successor to Occidental for most of that position. And I'm happy to answer any calls or questions on that. It was a remarkable effort on a number of people's parts, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Obviously, I want to end with what I think you all are having to deal with, and I think all of us are having to deal with, which is the fact that Wyoming's revenue picture has dramatically changed from March. We knew that there was a slight decline that was going to happen over the years. As I mentioned earlier, we're fighting hard to make sure that our coal plants are not closed prematurely, that they're not overly burdened with unnecessary regulation, and that they are given a fair chance to compete in the energy market that goes forward. The politics around renewables, we all know, but the practicality of how important it is that we keep our traditional assets online and producing is absolutely essential and needs to be factored into our overall thinking strategically going forward. But what that did, what we saw in March with the absolute sort of closure of economies worldwide, and that corresponded, I guess, with a battle between the Russians and the Saudis to drive down the price of oil, which had two benefits for the Saudis. One is it made it more difficult for the Russians to fund their proxy antagonist for the Saudis, and two, it would cut the legs out from domestic USA shale production, and it in fact did that. Wyoming for the first in this century, but only the second time since 1884, actually had a couple of weeks with no rigs running, no rigs. We saw the price of Wyoming asphalt go negative. We saw West Texas Intermediate crude go negative. We know that gas has been on the floor, and it's been devastating for Wyoming. So back in May, when the consensus revenue estimating group met, they predicted about $1.5 billion potential pessimistic loss in revenue. Their best case was about an $850 million loss in revenue. That is roughly a third of what we expect in revenues. So we started immediately by freezing all new hires and all new contracts. We're working and will release this week the first of our 10% cuts. And believe me, it is not easy to make those cuts. Wyoming government has already shrunk by 10% over the last decade. So we now are cutting things that hurt. Things like healthcare, things like the rest areas that were such a controversial thing back when Peg Shreve was trying to build them in the 1980s. And we have tried to do this in a judicious way, not just across the board, but by going to each agency and saying, we know all of these are hard. There may be some fat, let's get rid of the fat, but we know these are hard decisions to make. We want to make sure that they're public and that people understand what they are, and we'll release those this week. At the same time, I said, I want you to also prepare for the next 10%, so a total of 20%. Those are going to be much more strategic and much more important going forward. There are going to be massive things that Wyoming will no longer be able to provide. And that decision has to be well considered and thought through by the people of Wyoming and by our policymakers. But you'll know, a third, and we've taken, that's about 30%. So we will have, by December, 20% of those reductions either implemented or identified and shortly to be implemented, and we still have another 10% to go. And that 10% is going to require our legislature to meet and understand what are the things that they've told us to do over the last several years that they are now willing to say, you can't do that. We don't have the resources to do it. That's going to affect a number of our abilities, and I'm very concerned about that. Already in the Department of Environmental Quality, because we're having to reduce numbers of staff, we're seeing permits slowed down. Now, we're doing everything we can to try to modernize technology and improve the process. But I think this is one of the issues that we're going to have to deal with. Most importantly, our bedrock industries, the industries that we all know and love and that we all participate in, whether it be our mining industry, our oil and gas industry, our agricultural industry, or our tourism industry, we need to make sure those industries continue to thrive as best as we can in Wyoming. Now, I'm happy to say, in the way we identified the CARES money, that we have put almost 50% of that money out to small businesses in the form of help for small businesses with their wait staffs, with their temporary staffs, with their ability to keep welders on and other aspects of their business. And yeah, we are mindful of the fact that not everybody has been able to access those, so we continue to work on ways to do that. We've also taken a portion of it and we said it's very important. Wyoming got more money than any other state, 1.25 billion, 580,000 people. Compare that to Massachusetts, another state with a Republican governor, 7 million people, $2 billion. So Wyoming has fared very, very well. Just this week, we have put online an allocation process for clinics, long-term care, and other facilities, medical facilities, so that they can start spending these CARES dollars without going through an excessive and burdensome process. If there are questions about particular expenditures, then the State Loan and Investment Board will take those under consideration in the coming weeks. We've done the same thing for counties and for towns, and we're anxious to see those funds get deployed. I have to say, just like Congress always does, they passed this amazing bill with so much money in it, and then they said you can't use it for anything you would think you'd use it for, like getting ready for the future or ways to prepare yourself for the ongoing. This week we started seeing schools. This morning I saw a football game in progress down here, and so Wyoming is coming back. And I think Wyoming will do well, and that's where I would like to leave my comments on this is we have had tough times before. God knows, if you read some of the discussions about the formation of this state back before we had our Constitution, in the recorded comments about the formation of our Constitution, one of the comments was, we need to diversify our income. We need to diversify away from one source of income. If you look through the 20s, when Wyoming had a really tough time, the rest of the nation was doing well, we were very focused on oil. If you look through the 50s, if you look through the 60s, if you look through the 70s, if you look through the 80s, everybody knows how tough the 80s were. So Wyoming has had this continuing boom and bust cycle. But in that boom and bust cycle, the resiliency of ag and the resiliency of companies like Precor has really shown the character of Wyoming. And I am very confident, and I'm very happy to work with all of you, that Wyoming days are better and will become the best that we've had, and we are going to continue to work to make sure that our coal assets and that our oil and gas and our minerals have a posture in Wyoming. So with that, I'd be open to any suggestions, any comments, any questions that anyone has. I can't see you all, but I very, very much appreciate this opportunity to address you. And Mike and Walt, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for running a great corporation I'm proud to be a member of.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to our membership this morning. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next item. Okay. Just want to make some introductions first. We have, of course, most of you all have already met Walt, but Walt brings his wife Lana with us this morning, so Lana. And then a special guest appearance, Melissa, Walt's daughter, and her husband Jesse are here. So we have Vice President Philip Habeck is here. Philip. Secretary Treasurer Jerry Geist in the back, and his wife Gwen is here. Allison Gee and her husband Sean, and where are the kids, Allison? Mike Losey is here with his wife Connie. There's Mike. Jim Purdy is here as well. Jim. Jim Bumgardner and his wife Shelley are here. Mike Helvey is here, and Paul Baker. So we also have some guests that are with us today. Sean Taylor from the WREA. Sean, thanks for coming out. Sean thought the drawing for the Mustang was today. He came with high hopes. So that just means you'll be here again next year, right? That's right. And then Laura Murphy's here. Laurel is joining me to do entertainment at lunch. So she's a retired member service rep from the Sheridan areas here. And then also want to introduce a Representative-elect Chip Nyman. Chip, stand to be recognized. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate having you here, sir. You betcha. I also want to introduce, we have a video message from Senator Enzi, Mike Enzi. We'll start with that message. It's a couple-minute video welcoming you all to our meeting. So with that.
Congratulations to the Powder River Energy Corporation on 75 years. That means 75 years of member-focused service and working together to accomplish what would not be possible otherwise. It's been a tremendous journey, and you all should be proud for playing a part in your continued success. Any organization that has survived for 3/4 of a century is going to have an interesting history. But Precorp's story is unique in that it has also played a key part in helping grow and build the same community that it serves. From ranchers and farmers to oil and coal development, Precorp has been there to welcome new members and provide the power that's needed for further development in Northeast Wyoming. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today. It's a difficult time in our country to host public events, but I know that Precorp always works hard to put together a truly special meeting every year. I hope you all enjoy yourself and stay safe. Congratulations again, and have a great meeting.
Thank you, Senator Enzi. Our next guest that I would like to introduce with the video message is Senator Barrasso. If you could bring that up for us.
Well, thanks so much for allowing me to join you again this year for the Precorp meeting, and I wish we were doing it in person. I remember being with you last year at the Buffalo High School, and the year before that we were at the Camplex in Gillette, but I come every year to just thank you for what you continue to do for the citizens of Wyoming, and specifically providing affordable and really, really reliable power in Northeast Wyoming. So thank you. And I wanted to celebrate with you this year the 75th anniversary, the big birthday party. We'll have to put that off for next year. And I know that Walt's retiring, and Walt, thank you for your incredible 30 years of service and almost a decade as president, and you're stepping down. But I want to just take a second to talk about coronavirus and the impact that it has had, because you've had to deal with it in continuing to provide electricity in very troubling times. You know, coronavirus has hit everybody in America one way or another. In some locations, it's the disease that has been devastating from a health standpoint. In other places like Wyoming, it flatlined the economy. Energy, agriculture, tourism, the impacts have been dramatic. So Congress acted with the passing of the CARES Act to try to help people, small businesses, help people and businesses stay open, but it didn't cover electric co-ops. I remember talking to Sean Taylor about this when he said, hey, will rural electric co-ops be included in the legislation? Because we knew that in Wyoming, we had 13,000 small businesses take these Paycheck Protection Plan loans, very successful. The average loan, $78,000, so we know it worked. But I talked to the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary Mnuchin, about the specifics of the PPP and rural electrics. And this is not an area that the Secretary knew very much about. So I had to do, and I have the rural electric news study with Walt Christensen, and said, if you know Walt, you know his penchant for phrasing things so perfectly and sometimes so creatively that even a CEO can understand them. Well, we made 100% sure that the Secretary of Treasury understood rural electric co-ops, and as a result, we were able to make sure that the co-ops were able to qualify for these paycheck protection programs. So we think that was a big win. We're also working on legislation I've co-sponsored along with others on flexibility in rural areas so that you can kind of go out and refinance at low interest rates some of the loans that you may have outstanding. But it's a challenging time in our country. We had hearings yesterday earlier this week in Gillette at the Integrated Test Center at the Dry Fork coal-fired power plant with researchers and the University of Wyoming School of Energy Resource. We're continuing to work on ways to capture carbon, use it into making products that you can sell profitably, all of which are really important for the future of the resources that we have here in Wyoming. And this is a time when we see the Democrat Party at their convention talking about basically eliminating all fossil fuels from the fuel mix in the country, and they want to do it worldwide. So that's what we're challenged with. And when you take a look at California and the rolling blackouts there, you realize how much people need and rely on affordable, reliable, secure sources of energy. And that's what you at Precorp continue to do after 75 years. My hat's off to you. Thanks so much for what you do.
So thank you, Senator Barrasso, and I think that concludes the introductions. So turn it back over to you, Walt.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.
Thanks, Mike. Loophole already told us that we don't have a quorum actually for a meeting, and therefore we won't have a reading of the minutes unless you guys really want to hear them from last year's annual meeting. Anyway, we'll just skip over that, and he seemed to think that we ought to talk about it, so we're not going to. So anyway, thanks, Mark. But so we do have a couple contested races in this year's election, one from Campbell County and one from Weston County. And I'd like to thank our nominating committee members. I tell you what, it's a thankless job to try and find somebody to challenge, especially an incumbent, because the incumbents have done a good job, excluding myself because I'm not running. But anyway, 30 years, my wife said, that's enough, you get out of there. She didn't really say that, but anyway, our nominating committee members from Campbell County are Jamie Tarver and Mike Schober. Are either one of those people here? From Cook County, Rick Good and Dave Reed. I saw Rick a little bit ago. Rick's here. Sheridan County is Sean Ankney and Mike Latham. From Weston County, Pat Townsend and Jerry Phillips. And I saw Pat. I don't know whether Jerry's here or not. I don't see him, but I was contacted by every one of my neighbors, and they said, tell that damn Jerry to leave us alone. We're not going to run. So anyway, Pat, I appreciate your diligence in finding the people to run. And I don't see those guys here. But anyway, I'd like to introduce them. From Campbell County, Allison Gee and Barry Hayden. Is Barry here? Not seeing him. From Cook County, we have Philip Hawbeck, and he's right here in front. From Sheridan County, we have Mike Helvey. From Weston County, we have Clay Branscombe and Lucas Keeler. Are either one of you guys here? So I hope those guys attend regular board meetings better than they attended the annual non-meeting. But I'm sure they will. So our election judges, from Campbell County, we have Charlene Camblin and Stephen Acquisio. Is that how you pronounce his name? From Kirk County, Richard Costello and Chase Williams. Sheridan County, Chris Schock and Mike Terry. And from Weston County, Lloyd Davis and Bill Engel. And those guys are all back there counting votes right now. So anyway, from right now, I guess, is Jerry in here yet? We'll hear a report from the Secretary Treasurer as soon as he gets back in here. While we're waiting for Jerry to show up, I talked to Chip Nyman the other day and invited him to come to the meeting, and he said he would be very honored to come, and he told me yesterday that he's going to be here, and as you can see, he's there, and he's your new representative from House District 1. So I'll talk a little more about Chip and Sean Taylor. Sean's not going to get out of here without having some abuse. But anyway, with that, Jerry, you want to come up and give the treasurer's report?
Thanks, Walt. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Appreciate you all coming with the trying times going on. I'm just glad to see everybody could make it. We got close to a quorum. We got, I think, 90, but we didn't quite get 100. But appreciate all you guys coming. Treasurer's report is not intended to be a complete show of what our business is doing this year, but just to give you the highlights, and if you got any questions, then get a hold of people that can answer those questions. But well, that didn't do what I thought it was going to do. There we go. Okay, last year the co-op sold 2.12 billion kilowatt hours of electricity. That's been steadily in a decline since coal is going down and everything else is going down, but we continue to, here's a breakdown of where our operating revenue comes from. Just gives you a quick snapshot there, shows you that commercial and industrial is a huge part of our business, with residential and seasonal making up about 15% of our business. So as the industry goes, as we all know, in the area we live in, as the coal and the oil and gas change, and as their flow goes, just like the rest of the state, that's how Precorp's goes. Okay, in 2009, Powder River Energy had a really good year. Things went well, and we set up a revenue deferral account because everybody doesn't like to see their rates go up and down all the time, predominantly up. They like to see them go down. But we had excess revenue that year, and we put it into a revenue deferral account to hopefully smooth out things, and when we have bad years, withdraw from that account so we don't have to raise our rates any more often than necessary. And right now we have $1.4 million left in that revenue deferral account, and we will withdraw that this year to help meet our margins and our metrics so that our funding through the Rural Utilities Service, we meet our metrics there to be in good standing with our loans there. Just a quick breakdown of our operating expenses. Nothing outstanding here. Our single biggest cost, of course, is purchased power. Then you break everything else down. Comes up with $38 million in expenses for employees, transmission costs, repairs, all that kind of stuff. Purchased power, 2.19 billion kilowatts at a total cost of $136.5 million. Breaks down to 6.23 cents, which is higher than we'd like on everything when we're paying the bill, which we all know, but it's an economical cost, and around the state that is a real way. We're in the bottom portion of power costs around the state. Summary of our operations and the cost there. Once again, cost of purchase power is the big thing. This slide just breaks down and shows what our margin is. We operate, even though rates, we just got a rate case passed and rates went up, we try and operate on as thin a margin as we can to be as cheap a power cost provider to you as we can. And we're running on a 0.7% operating margin, which when things are going like they have been the last few years, is a really thin margin. Doesn't give you much room to work with. Capital credits we retire, which is your investment in the co-op. Last year we retired $14 million worth of those. We've retired $104 million total. And we allocated capital credits in 2019 and our generation and transmission ones in 2020. We haven't paid those, we allocated those. Member benefits, being part of the communities we're in is important for us to be engaged in the community and participate in the community. A few of the highlights of the things we do: provide scholarships to kids in all 5 counties that we serve. Same, purchase livestock at the junior livestock sale every year. We have a community involvement committee where people can apply for funds for different events, different things going on. Gave out $24,000 last year in that. We have members that choose not to accept their capital credits and donate those to the Powder River Foundation, which is a great organization that gives back to the community. The member donations last year for that were $66,000. You can choose to round up your bill to the nearest dollar with Operation Roundup, and then that money goes to the foundation. That totaled up almost $18,000 last year. And then we offer through Powder River Energy a home efficiency loan program, which is a extremely low interest loan for doing home efficiency things, whether that's appliances or whatever. We had $4,900 last year out in that. And then just to wrap up, our pledge to you as a co-op is to positively influencing and improving lives for those who serve by providing reliable energy and services while paving the way for access and affordability. Because our goal is to provide you with reliable, accessible power as your co-op. That's all I have. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Jerry. The President's report, I had a book that was about that thick. Well, I guess it wasn't quite that thick. It was about like this with my speech in it. But anyway, you guys came to support your co-op. And I'm very appreciative of the people that did show up. And this is, these are very challenging times with the coronavirus that reared its ugly head last winter. And I see there's a few masks that you guys have got on. And I told the board, I said, you might want to have a mask in your pocket, but it's up to you whether you wear it or not. And so anyway, I don't know what's going to happen with this COVID-19, but I pray to God that it gets over soon. And I think once we get herd immunity, if you will, I think it'll go away. It'll lessen anyway. And hopefully you guys all stay healthy, and we appreciate your attendance at this annual meeting. We just had an election here a while back, and I got an email from Sean Taylor, and he's worried about the results of the election because some of the allies of the co-op didn't get reelected. And he asked the people around the state, if you know any of these people that did get elected, could you call me and maybe touch base with those people? I said, sure, I think we can do that. Well, I got a hold of Sean and told him about our new House Representative for House District 1, Chip Nyman, who is here. I appreciate your attendance, Chip. And I told Sean that I would get him acquainted with him, so today Sean will get acquainted. And I also told him, I said, he may be a little bronky to begin with, so start out, get your groundwork done, you know, start him out with a Johnson halter and a round corral. And then, you know, when you do get on him, I'd start with a hackamore. Don't get too carried away trying to get him to turn this way. And for sure, you don't want to try to neck rein that guy because it ain't going to work. You'll have to plow rein him around a little bit, and then pretty soon, then you'll be able to put him into a snaffle bit and make sure you got him tamed down a little bit before you go out of the corral because he might buck a little bit. And I told Sean that earlier today, and he said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So anyway, those of you that are ranch raised, you guys know what I'm talking about. And Chip's a very intelligent person, and he's an excellent businessman. And so anyway, Sean, you got your work cut out for you, but I think he'll be okay. And if he isn't, we'll learn that at the next election. So anyway, good luck to you, Chip. When my dad helped start this co-op 75 years ago, it doesn't seem possible that it's gone on 75 years, and I'll be damned if I haven't been here for 30 of those 75 years. And so anyway, that is due in large part to my wife, Lana. She's been there to support me and be at home, help raise the kids and give them spankings when they need it and hugs when they need it. And so anyway, I'm very, very thankful to have a wife like Lana who's been so supportive. And as I get to the end of this annual meeting, I've been here for every one of the annual meetings that we've had in 30 years. And I feel like this is kind of like graduation night when I graduated high school. And the first thing I did was grab the diploma when we got to sit back down on the gym floor and see that it was signed. That was my first concern. So anyway, got through with that, and at the time, not that there weren't some rocky times between then and when Lana and I got married, but she was with me after the graduation. And after we got done with the graduation, we left there, and I went and had a cold beer or two with my friends, and that's just exactly what I plan on doing after this is over with. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I wish we could have had a meeting, but anyway, you guys are here in attendance, and we're going to keep the lights on for you, and thank you all for coming.
It's the noon whistle. So 20 years ago, I showed up here at Powder River Energy in Sundance, Wyoming, at the first annual meeting just to introduce myself. I had a lot more hair, and I was a lot more scared at the time. When you take a look at all the things that have happened in the past 20 years, and you especially look at what has even been happening for us in the past 10, I'm not going to go through all the details of that because you guys have been along for the ride. You're the ones that show up on the telephone town halls and listen and ask questions. You're the folks that meet me in the hallway and say, Mike, I've read your Wren article and ask me questions about it. You're the folks that will approach me and tell me you have a problem and you'd like to get somebody to look at it, and you're not afraid to do that. And through all these things that we've been experiencing, we've come together at a pretty difficult time. And Powder River has an amazing resilience as a company. And it goes back to the story that Walt started to tell about what happened 75 years ago when Walt's dad, Earl, and a bunch of other folks got together and decided, for whatever reason, to make life easier in Northeast Wyoming. And I remember Walt tells the story about his dad, Earl, used to go out, and at the time you had to pitch in $5 in order to say you were serious about a membership. And so Earl would go around and ask people if they'd want to sign up, and if they didn't have the $5, guess what? Earl did. He looked out for his friends. He looked out for his neighbors. That whole philosophy has been what has permeated Powder River Energy. And that's what's helped us, the neighbor helping neighbor, the vision to look forward and dream about what Precorp could be. Who knew 75 years ago when they started this journey that Precorp would be the second largest utility in the state of Wyoming, the largest electric cooperative in the state of Wyoming, that we would be sort of the barometer for what's happening in the state of Wyoming as it relates to the energy industry and booms and busts. And you heard Governor Gordon talk about the difficulties that Wyoming is coming to grips with acutely this year, but has been working on it for a while. You guys have been with us for this journey for many years. For a decade, we've been talking about declines that were coming in the coal industry. For 20 years, we've been talking about, while CBM was booming, we were talking about what's going to happen when CBM goes away. And every annual meeting, we've talked about that. And I've shared what we're doing. So you know the story. And the strategy that we have, the things that we've done, are nothing short of amazing. The Precorp team, with leadership from the Precorp board, has done amazing things to plan for the contingencies, plan for the ultimate bust that we get in this kind of wild riding energy economy. Back then, I think, when they were talking, the founders like Earl were talking about Powder River Energy, I think they would look at what we have now as, a miracle, frankly. Here we are, 16,000 square miles, 11,000 miles of power line, revenues that are pretty huge, even though since 2015, our sales have declined 30%. And even though since 2015, our employee count has gone down well over 12%, counting the 6 positions that we're not currently filling right now, we're down over 20 positions. So the Precorp team has managed to the bust. And the rate increase that we have put into effect that I've talked to you guys about every annual meeting since the last time we increased rates, which was 4 years ago, we implemented that, and now we are ready. When CBM goes away, and they're likely to go away this year, I can't imagine them continuing to come out of bankruptcy. It's not going to be the thing that blows up the co-op. It's not going to be the thing that impacts your quality of power, your service quality. And that's a testament to the leadership at Precorp. That's a testament to these 10 board members, these 9 board members in front of me, and Walt Christensen, our board president, over here to the side. We've got some challenges ahead of us with COVID-19. And how are we going to get through those? How are we going to get through the rest of what's going on? And really, I can only explain it with a story. And I don't know about you, but the things that have happened to us all this past year have taken me to my knees. When you don't have any place else to look but up, sometimes you can be inspired. And so I want to tell you a story about this guy named Bob. So Bob's in a flood, and it's raining, and it keeps coming. This is a flood of epic proportions. And kind of gets up to his porch, and he gets a little worried, comes into his house, he gets a little bit worried, goes up in the attic, busts a hole in his roof, and is on the roof of his house, and the waters keep rising. And Bob is a man that knows how to get on his knees. So he prays. He says, God, help me. You know, I trust you. And help me get out of this mess. And so next thing you know, a boat comes up. He looks in the boat. Guess who's in the boat? Bob's brother. He says, hey, Bob, come on down. I got this boat. I rigged this up from stuff we had behind the house. Maybe he was a rancher and put a bunch of wire and stuff together to get this boat to float. And Bob looked at his brother and said, I ain't getting in the boat with you. I'm mad at you. I don't want to be trapped with you in a boat. I'm just going to pray more, and God's going to help me. So Bob went off. So the next thing that happens, the water keeps getting a little bit higher. This time a canoe comes up. Looks in the canoe, and who's in the canoe? Bob's neighbor, but they haven't really been neighborly very often. They had a falling out. Might have had something to do with the fence, I don't know, but they had a falling out, and neighbor says, hey, Bob, come on in, get in this canoe. There's room for you. Let's go to safety. And Bob says, I don't know if I want to do that. You go ahead. And Bob says, I'm a praying man. God's going to get me out of this mess. Well, canoe went away. Then a raft came. This was a party boat. There were young kids in this raft and people that Bob never knew, talking ways that he never heard them talk before and playing music he didn't like. And they asked him, hey, why don't you get in with us? We'll go to safety. Bob said, no, you guys are too different than me. Not going to do it. I'm going to pray. So the water eventually comes up, and not so true to Bob's name, he could not bob very well, and Bob drowned. He's at pearly gates. Bob asked St. Peter at the pearly gates, what the heck, man? I've been a praying man all my life. I've gone to church. I've treated my neighbors right. I've done the right things. Why didn't you save me? St. Peter looks at him and says, what do you mean, why didn't you save me? Well, yeah, I drowned. He goes, look, Bob, we sent a boat. We sent a canoe. We sent a raft after you, and you didn't get in it. So we ask, how are we going to get through this? Look what we did 75 years ago. We came together as neighbors. We came together as friends. We came together as people that didn't think the same, probably. We came together with people that maybe had money and some that maybe didn't. But over the past 75 years, Powder River Energy, its leaders, its members, have built an amazing organization that I promise you is going to withstand COVID-19. It's going to withstand the decline of coal. It's going to withstand whatever happens politically, because the magic that we have is each other. That's what's going to keep us going. So when you think about it, the lesson that Bob needed to learn is that it's people. God works through people. So I just challenge you to look around, look at your neighbor, look at yourself, look at your family. And as things continue to get tough, and they will, whether it's COVID or whether it's energy industry or whatever that next challenge might be, it's people that are going to get us through it. That's how God works. So that's my message. A little bit of a non-traditional CEO speech, but I think it was right for the time. You know, as I think about my 20 years here at Powder River, and I thought it was really funny. I had no idea that my little teasing on Walt in last month's, 2 months ago's Red Magazine would actually make it to Senator Barrasso's hand. But Walt has lots of Waltisms. Some of them I can't really say in mixed company, but Walt can. Loophole, outhouse attorney, some of those Waltisms. Walt has been an inspiration to me over the past 20 years. And when I say inspiration, I don't know all those things that he was talking about, you know, the different kind of bits you might put in a horse's mouth, or the different kind of ropes you might put on. I think Walt's tried them all on me. So we have a little bit of a send-off for Walt. It's traditional that we give him just a little token of appreciation for sitting at the board table for all these years And Walt has command of the gavel, believe it or not. He can make that gavel sing, and he does every from time to time. And Lana, if Walt pulls out this gavel for any of your ranch meetings, you're going to have to take care of that. We claim no responsibility. So, Walt, if you could come up for a minute, and I think Mr. Baker's going to present this to you. You want me to read that? Read that? So, yeah, come this way so we can get a good picture. So, Walt, in appreciation of Pre-Corp Director Walt Christensen for outstanding service to the cooperative membership from 1990 to 2020, your passion for rural electrification has been a valuable asset to the Board of Directors for the past 30 years. Presented by the Pre-Corp Board of Directors on August 22nd, 2020. So I'm gonna let you shake his hand because he's a board member. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you could give a few more Waltisms for us.
Somebody asked me, are you going to cry? Hell no, I'm not going to cry. But anyway, I want to first of all, thank the membership for allowing me to be your member, those of you from Weston County, and believe me, I was here for all 5 counties of Wyoming, and there's some very tough decisions that are made around this board. But anyway, your board of directors does a damn fine job. So anyway, they should be given a round of applause, and I want to thank them for this nice plaque, and thank everybody for letting me be your president for the past few years. So anyway, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might speak in the mic, how do you do that? Thank you. I've got something to say. I'm not on the agenda, and Walt is not really good about letting people just talk. So I'm going to ask for forgiveness, not permission. Anyway, Walt, you have been involved with the co-op for your whole life. And I think you learned the importance of involvement in our co-op from your dad. And in 2003, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in 2003, we honored Earl Christensen for his lifetime achievement. Starting Tri-County, he did a lot of work when he was a legislator, advancing the co-op way of life. And we, since then, we've had a select few people that we've given the award to in his memory. This year, Walt, the board gave him the 2020 recipient. We've got the plaque, and we've got this embroidered jacket. I don't even know what it says on there. But anyway, in the Earl Christensen Award. So.
Well, thank you, Ruben, and thank the board. They're the ones that approved this deal. The one thing that I'm a little chagrined over, the president's supposed to know what the hell's going on around there, and I'm the last one to find out about it. But anyway, you guys are trying to get a tear out of me, but it isn't going to work. But anyway, I want to thank you guys. This is very humbling, and my dad would be particularly humbled. And so anyway, Dad, if you're up there listening, thanks for everything that you've done for me. So anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks for everybody.
There's one string attached though. one string attached to this. We'd like to have you back in the next annual meetings. If the board decides to continue the legacy of the award, we'd like to have you back to present that for us.
I'd be very honored to do that. So anyway, hopefully we can have a annual meeting at our next gathering. At this time, is there any old business that needs to come before this group? And you guys can sure ask questions or have comments. Just because we're not having an annual meeting doesn't mean that you guys can't speak your piece if you've got a question for somebody. But one person that needs to have some recognition, and I don't know whether she's received it yet, is Shelley Ritthaler for putting together this book that everybody received. So anyway, Shelley, could you stand up? Thank you. Shelley, you did a damn fine job. So anyway, thank you for doing all that. And Tim Belder was involved in a lot of it too. So anyway, thanks, Tim. Is there any new business? Jerry, do you have any election results? Okay, that sounds good. I think with that, we ought to head over and have lunch and then we can do some prize drawings. Rick, you want to come up and announce that? Has everybody had an opportunity to buy some tickets?
Ruben, we'll go ahead and take your money, but we won't put the ticket in. Just kidding. Are we all good? All right, thank you. As soon as we draw the name, we'll head over for lunch. It's over in the elementary cafeteria. It's air conditioned with cold beverages. And we'll announce the door prize winners over there.
The winner of the side, Walt Christensen. No, I'm just kidding. Arlen Gustafson. Is he still here? Okay, that's who won the side-by-side. His phone number is here, so anyway. Thanks, everybody. Let's go have lunch over across the parking lot in an air-conditioned facility. And thanks, everybody, for coming, and this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.